2006 was an incredible year for James Blake. He won 5 singles and became the #1 player in America. This year, he's the 5th seed in the world and won the Sydney International for the 2nd year in a row.
The biggest thing about being a #1 American is the voice it gives me to give back. I think those kind of things, the little exhibitions I do, the charity events I do in the off-season are more important than the matches I played.
At the Harlem Junior Tennis and Education Program in New York, James spends an evening balancing his tennis career with his humanitarian efforts.
James Blake came from this area and he made it big, so it encourages me.
Born in New York in 1979, James' interest in tennis goes back to when he was 3 years old. His dad volunteered at what was then called the Harlem Junior Tennis League. His father would bring little James in a stroller and let him out to hit tennis balls.
I looked up to my dad. He was always on the court with me. He was always either on the court with me or the court next to me because he was volunteering, teaching the clinics.
Growing up, James played competitively. In 1999, he turned pro. But his budding career was almost over before it got started. Nearly 3 years ago, he injured his neck falling into a post during a practice game in Rome.
I was very scared. I got the wind knocked out of me, couldn't really breathe, and didn't know what to do.
During his recovery, he learned his father was hiding the fact that he was dying from stomach cancer. 2004 was not a good year.
That's a year I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, but I still say that breaking my neck, fracturing the vertebrae was the best thing that happened to me because I got to be around my dad for the last 6 weeks of his life, and I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Within a 2-month period, James had broken his neck, watched his father die, and with his body giving out, developed shingles, which left his face partially paralyzed.
I believe now that things happen for a reason, and I was meant to just be home, appreciating my friends, appreciating the family I do have left. I feel lucky that I have those people around me.
He appreciates the opportunity to help people like Renee Eubanks. She won a private lesson with James at a silent auction for the Harlem Junior Tennis and Education Program.
He fed me a lot of backhands out there, helped me get my rhythm together a lot. So it was definitely a workout because I was working on something that I have a problem with, but also a little bit nervous because I was playing with James.
But she isn't the only one to benefit from tonight's visit by James Blake. So are the children.
I tried to help out at the Harlem Junior Tennis Program when I was 16 years old, just as a tutor in the homework club. So you can help out in many different ways, but I feel like using my time now, if I take 2 or 3 hours to give, I can make a much greater difference just because I have that voice of being the #1 American.
This is Elmo, the lovable 3-year-old little fuzzy red monster who dazzles little kids across the world with his infectious laugh and curiosity that makes learning such a wonderful adventure. But who brings this character to life? Kevin Clash is a young man who is just as infectious and lovable as Elmo. He's the voice and movement behind one of the Muppets' best-known characters.
And now just really go wide and show me a really, really pretty picture.
We went behind the scenes with Kevin, where he's directing a cast of Muppeteers.
But why is he walking?
Kevin's path to the wonderful world of puppets and Muppets started as a little boy growing up in Baltimore.
My mom sewed a lot, and my father drew a lot, so maybe that combination came together. But you know, I started building when I was really young, like Hansel and Gretel and Mickey Mouse. I mean, I really got into, you know, the craft of it more than really looking at it as a career. You know, it was just something that I really, really enjoyed to do.
Yeah, that's right. Elmo's World!
I started to incorporate the puppets into school and started using the characters with different you know, projects that the teacher would have us do.
One time it actually helped his grades.
I had a puppet named Artie that I would build. I actually made costumes for him as a male and a female to talk about the climate in Russia. And the little piece got so popular that I had to do it for the whole class and other classes.
Then came heritage fairs and other gigs. He would eventually work with one of his early mentors, Bob Keeshan, the creator of Captain Kangaroo. He would also make the cover of a local newspaper's magazine.
You see how that's the shorter it makes it look better. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Kevin eventually met Jim Henson, the creator of the Muppets, and that led him to a whole new world here in New York City. While many people believe Kevin is the creator of Elmo, he isn't.
Richard Hunt, who was one of the principal puppeteers with Jim, took on Elmo and didn't like it. And then he threw it to me. He took me into the producer and said, listen, I don't really want to do this character. Kevin has a voice for it. She said, fine, I don't care. And that's how I really got it.
We couldn't leave without giving Elmo his say. We wondered what he thought about his friend Kevin.
Well, Elmo knows that he does something in connection with Elmo, but Elmo doesn't really understand.
With 12 Emmys behind him for producing, directing, and performing Elmo, there is one award that continues to elude him.
It's been a challenge to be recognized in the African American press, but I do get a lot of accolades in a lot of other ways. I mean, especially from kids. It's a lot of fun.
For over 20 years, actress Victoria Rowell has found a home on television. But for 2 decades prior to that, she never really had a place she called home.
I am the product of America and Health and Human Services and the Administration of Children and Family Services, and I feel that voice. It's in me, and that is my biggest voice. I didn't necessarily want to talk about my life as a foster youth. I didn't want to necessarily reach out to help for help, and you have to. I learned that the hard way. You have to reach out for help.
And she'll never be silent again, now using her fame to help other foster children.
My voice speaks to the issue of the pandemic of foster care in our nation. Over 500,000 children, just over 130,000 foster parents. Where are all the children? Where are they being warehoused? How many group homes hold children that weep every night because they don't have permanency in their lives?
A voice that serves as the spokesperson for the California Connection, the Annie Casey Foundation, and an organization she founded, the Rowell Foster Children's Positive Plan, which encourages foster children to fulfill their potential through involvement in fine arts, sports, and the promise of job opportunities.
There is a blessing and a lesson in my experience, and that's what I really try to impart to youth that I talk to. Find the gold, find the platinum in the experience, and that's what I was able to do. I took all of my foster care experience and turned it into an acting career.
She has lived such a life, and she shares with people, and she gives to people. She's a foster child. That's what she speaks at great lengths about. Her book is about that in her life. And she just has one of the biggest spirits. I'm always inspired by that entrepreneurial spirit, which she has.
That survival spirit also gave her the fortitude to write her New York Times bestseller, The Woman Who Raised Me. The book chronicles her childhood growing up in the state of Maine's foster care system.
It speaks to the voice of the cause, which is our youth, our disenfranchised youth, the homeless, the elderly, the powerful spirit, the transformational nature of long-term mentoring in a child's life. Not letting go. That's what it says to me. That's what this book and writing it has not only done for me, but obviously thousands of people as well.
Meet Bruce Smith, the animator responsible for bringing the villain in The Princess and the Frog to life.
My job as a supervising animator, specifically on Princess and the Frog, is that I handle Dr. Facilier, who's the evil villain in this movie. It's my job to really trace his arc in the film. You know, when you first meet him, he may not be as evil as you think, but as the film progresses, you know, he unfolds like an artichoke, and you start to really sort of see who this character is and what he's made of. And as an artist, you're responsible for that arc throughout the entire film.
From the evil stepmother in Cinderella, to Captain Hook in Peter Pan, to Cruella de Vil in 101 Dalmatians, Disney villains have become legendary in American culture.
So I imagine Dr. Facilier is sort of like a, you know, the result of a date between Cruella de Vil and Captain Hook. You know what I mean? It's like, what happens if those two got together? I would imagine in my mind they would create a Dr. Facilier.
Tall and well-spoken, he uses magic and witchcraft to sing and dance his way into people's hearts.
It's the green, it's the green, it's the green you need. And when I looked into your future, it's the green that I see.
The Princess and the Frog brings Walt Disney Pictures back into its original art form for a whole new generation.
The most rewarding part of being a part of this film specifically is that it ushers in our sort of brand new era of hand-drawn animation. Hand-drawn animation is really what the legacy of Disney animation was based on.
Normally when I go over a typical scene with this guy, I gotta go back in and then add his beads, and then go back in and add his feather on his hat, and then go back into the scene and add his coattails.
Born and raised in Los Angeles, California, Bruce has been drawing cartoons since he was 5. But a friend pointed out that there were no black people in cartoons.
I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you ever see the Flintstones? I was like, yeah, see no black people in the Flintstones. I was like, I never really thought about that. And he's like, you ever see the Jetsons? I was like, yeah, no black people in the Jetsons either. I'm like, oh, so you're trying to say there's no black people in the past and there's no black people in the future either? I said, well, I want to change that.
And he set off creating memorable characters. He directed Bebe's Kids and created Disney's The Proud Family. And now, this.
Now there's lots of artists from all colors stepping into this business and really making, a difference. For me, it's like, I've done projects that have African-American characters at the central, but I can't be the only one to do those types of projects. So it's good to know, and it's good for students of this business, kids to know that there is, a face behind those projects. I hope this film inspires lots of young artists to see themselves on the screen and want to continue to pursue this as a career, because we want animators to come and help us, continue to carry this legacy. I would say as an artist, soak it all in, and if that's something you want to do, completely pursue it.
She is absolutely out of control. She's been fighting.
Yes.
She has been stealing.
Yes.
She is sexually active, and she's only 12 years old.
Yes.
What in the world is going on in your home?
If you ask Judge Glenda Hatchet about her biggest life accomplishment, she'd tell you that it's her ability to have a positive impact on troubled youth and their families. But if you ask her about the road she took that led her to becoming one of the most popular judges on television, her answer might shock you.
I never expected to be a judge, certainly never expected to be on television. I never even expected to practice law. I went to law school to have the degree and to have the knowledge and the background, and it's just kind of interesting how my life has taken these different turns. I went to work right out of law school as a clerk in federal district court for the first African-American judge to be appointed to a federal court in the Deep South, for which I will always be so grateful. It was really one of the most amazing experiences of my life.
Having worked for a judge who fought for and believed in civil rights, helped Judge Hatchet make the decision to leave her corporate job and accept the appointment of Chief Presiding Judge for the Fulton County, Georgia Juvenile Court.
It is the hardest job I've ever had in my life. It is the most difficult job I have ever had in my life. From horrendous gang executions to a little girl sitting in my chambers who is 5 years old and who is HIV positive but was born healthy. Her aunt got custody of her because her mother was locked up, and her aunt took her and started prostituting her in exchange for a nickel bag of crack cocaine, repeatedly. And so there were some very dark times on that bench.
Judge Hatchet's mission statement is simple. She says she wants to empower parents, inspire young people, and strengthen families. In Judge Hatchet's book, Say What You Mean What You Say, she gives parents 7 strategies to secure their children's future.
The title, Say What You Mean and Mean What You Say, is what too many parents don't do. And we aren't defining clearly what our expectations are of our children, and these are the limits. If you say be in at 10 o'clock, it does not mean 10:05. It does not mean 10:30. It means 10 o'clock.
Boy, if you ever think about stealing from your grandmama, oh, no. You got to do some apologies here. You got, starting with your mother.
I love what I do. I do.
Dr. Keith Black is chairman of the Department of Neurosurgery at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. Black specializes in brain tumors and leads teams through complicated surgeries.
I think I'd be alive if I didn't have Dr. Black.
How are you, Sherry?
Good.
Good? You feeling good?
I'm feeling really good.
One of his patients is Sherry Sands. She was diagnosed with a brain tumor 18 years ago. After visiting 5 neurosurgeons, she chose Black to perform her surgery.
I was at the computer desk and I saw the tumor, and then in 2 months he told me, Sherry, we're gonna get it.
Dr. Black is one of only 50 neurosurgeons considered a specialist in treating brain tumors. Since enrolling in medical school, he's been fascinated with what he calls the sacredness of the brain.
There's nothing that I can think of more incredible in the universe than the human brain. When I'm operating on it and when I look at it, it brings me closer to God.
Married with 2 children, Dr. Black has had his share of adventures as a pilot and world traveler. He's also met dignitaries like Nelson Mandela and Al Gore, and celebrities like Stevie Wonder, Sidney Poitier, and Quincy Jones. But his greatest high of all happens about 250 times a year, operating on patients like Sherry Sands. This year, an estimated 45,000 people will be diagnosed with a brain tumor.
Knock on wood, I've never lost a patient on the table, but you know, there are always outcomes that, you know, you wish had turned out different.
And in the life and death world of neurosurgery, Dr. Black knows losing his focus can mean losing a patient.
When I'm in surgery, I go into a different zone, and you focus all of your talent, all your energy, and all your spiritual self into trying to help and heal that patient that you have on the table. I think it's important, you know, when you're doing surgeries to realize that that person is someone's mother or someone's father or someone's sister, and to operate on them like it was your mother or your sister that you're operating on.
And that's precisely why Time magazine named him one of its heroes of medicine, and why Black Enterprise named him one of America's leading doctors.
If I had to thank Dr. Black, I would thank him for giving me 18 years that I didn't have.
These patients are facing, I think, the most devastating thing that you can face, certainly the most scary. I mean, it's nothing I think can evoke fear in us than, you know, being given the diagnosis of a brain tumor. Some people consider me to be a hero. I don't consider that. I really consider my patients to be the heroes. They're the ones that are facing the real challenge.
The Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater has been entertaining audiences for half a century.
The Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater being around for 50 years is quite a feat.
Artistic director Judith Jameson keeps the late Alvin Ailey's vision alive by celebrating the human spirit through dance.
50 years of commitment and dedication, those words we use all the time, commitment and dedication, but really, there's a love of someone who says, this is an African-American cultural expression and experience, and this is the modern dance tradition of this country, and I want to put that together, and I want you to shine, and I want you to reflect people that are in the audience. They should see themselves in you, not as dancers, but as people. That's what he gave us, and that's why we're still around.
What started as a New York-based company of young African-American dancers performing Alvin Ailey's Blues Suite in 1958 has grown into the world's most traveled dance company, performing in 71 countries and on 6 continents.
There is no way that this is an accident that we got here or that we were lucky that we got here. Because everyone who knew Mr. Ailey knew about his generosity and his importance as a choreographer and how much he was interested in you as a person. That includes the dancer and the audience.
When asked about the future of the dance theater, Jameson has one word.
Bright. The future looks bright. It always does.
Doctors Alfred Ashford and Gerald Hoke are spearheading the charge to combat one of the leading causes of death among men in the United States, prostate cancer. Based out of New York's Harlem Hospital, Dr. Ashford is director of medicine and Dr. Hoke is chief of urology. Prostate cancer is often hard to detect.
If you have symptoms, it's probably too late. So you never want to wait for symptoms.
An estimated 2 million men live with prostate cancer, and it disproportionately affects the black community. African American men are 56% more likely to develop the disease compared to white men, and nearly 2.5 times more likely to die from it.
Each year in the United States, approximately 220,000 men are diagnosed with this disease. And up until recently, approximately 27,000 of those men will lose their lives to prostate cancer.
Prostate cancer, by and large, is a silent killer. So the best thing a black man can do, or any man for that matter, is to have regular checkups with their primary care physician or even their urologist. And that includes a prostate examination and a PSA. Beginning at age 50.
Age is the #1 risk factor. It occurs more often in men 65 and above, but it does occur in young men as well. Symptoms include frequent or burning urination, pain and stiffness in the lower back, and erectile dysfunction.
If you've been recently diagnosed with prostate cancer, some of the tips I would suggest is #1, find out what all your options are, okay? Try not to be steered into a particular option. Most of the time, patients are going to have more than one choice. Not all the time, but most of the time, you're going to have at least 2 choices. #2, do your own homework. There are lots of resources like the American Cancer Society. You can go online, find out about the different treatment options. I encourage my patients to get second opinions, just so they can find out if there are any other options that I'm missing. And then talk it over with your family.
While there are a number of treatments to try and combat the disease, many wonder, is there a way to prevent it?
It's always been felt that a low-fat diet and certain supplements may mitigate against your risk. The jury's still out, and when patients ask me that very same question, I tell them, well, really, there's no one thing that I can really say is going to reduce your risk.
Colin Powell, Harry Belafonte, and as you heard earlier, singer Charlie Wilson are just a few of the well-known men living with this disease.
This is a treatable disease when you catch it early. The good news is that compared to 10 or 15 years ago, I've noticed more patients are asking to be screened for prostate cancer, and more primary care physicians are actually screening their patients. Because when you screen, you have a shot at detecting disease at a treatable stage.
For their dedication in their work against fighting prostate cancer and also giving men a chance at life, Our World with Black Enterprise salutes Doctors Ashford and Hoke as our slice of life. We encourage every man to get tested. Early detection is key.
I'm Chris Gardner.
When Chris Gardner isn't running his multi-million-dollar brokerage firm in Chicago as its chief executive officer, he's a staunch supporter of the CARA program, a program dedicated to assisting homeless and at-risk people in their efforts to get training, job placement, and critical support services. Gardner made it to Wall Street after spending a year living on the streets.
We were homeless, but we were not hopeless. There's a major difference.
In Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Christopher Paul Gardner was raised by an abusive alcoholic stepfather and a mother who was in and out of prison.
My stepfather chose to remind me, it seems, every day, I ain't your daddy. You ain't got no daddy, with a few other words thrown in there that no child should ever hear.
He used the Navy as a way to escape his turbulent home, spending 3 years stationed in North Carolina. Soon he met his future wife and together had the couple's first son, Christopher Jr. Shortly after the Navy, his wife pressured him to make more money, but when it didn't happen, the couple separated. Chris was forced to live in a single-room occupancy, where he was later reunited with his son a few months later.
I think the words were, I don't want the baby anymore, it's your turn, here.
Gardner spent over a year caring for his young son, sometimes while living on the streets of San Francisco, often sleeping with his son in bathrooms.
I had to teach my little boy how to play a game, 2 years old. And the game is called Shh. And that means that no matter what anyone says on the other side of this door, no matter how hard they pound, no matter what they threaten, we're not here.
Gardner felt part of an invisible class, the working homeless, the people who work daily but have no place to call home. And all the while, Chris continued taking baby steps toward a Wall Street career. His journey started with a red Ferrari.
It wasn't the car, it was the guy driving the car. But then again, it was the car, because the car represented, wow, options. I engaged this gentleman in a conversation. What do you do? How do you do that? Turns out he was a stockbroker.
Gardner started in an entry-level position at a brokerage firm in San Francisco, but when he was fired, he moved to Chicago and started his own business, where ironically, his firm now underwrites bonds issued by BART, the very transit system where he and his son spent nights when they were homeless. This Christmas, Gardner's story hits the big screen.
You're not quitting on us yet, are you?
Don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something. Not even me. All right?
All right.
Superstar Will Smith will produce and star in The Pursuit of Happiness, the movie based on Gardner's book of the same name.
Let me tell you something. Will Smith played Chris Gardner better than Chris Gardner ever did. Got paid better, too.
Aaron Dworkin has always had a love affair with music.
I began playing the violin when I was 5.
Growing up, classical music always fascinated him.
I went through a lot of turmoil in different points of time in my childhood and my adolescence, and very often the violin is what I turned to express myself.
But what was even more fascinating was the influence blacks had in the classical genre.
Here I was, an African-American violinist my whole life, playing the violin, never knew there were any black composers. No one ever brought it up with me, no one ever exposed it to me.
This inspired him to create the Sphinx Organization, a program that promotes diversity in classical music. In its 10-year history, Dworkin has handed out scholarships, prizes, and string instruments to the tune of more than $1 million. He's reached over 45,000 students in urban schools nationwide, and Dworkin says he's made an impact.
Well, the benefits of classical music study to young people is really far and wide. I mean, first of all, you have all of the related benefits to their other academic study. Their improved test scoring in math and science. Overall, there's all of the youth development skill sets that they develop.
21-year-old Gareth Johnson is one of the musicians in the program. He entered his first competition when he was 15.
In 2001, I got third place, and I realized how great of a competition and opportunity it was. They allowed me to have full scholarships to the summer camps across the country. I played with a lot of major symphony orchestras as soloist, so it was a great experience.
Johnson showcased his talent at the group's annual concert at Carnegie Hall.
It's the greatest place you can play, inside a Stern auditorium. Every violinist wants to play there. And to get the chance to play as soloist is the greatest honor that you can get as a violinist.
I'm tremendously proud of Gareth, and he's a phenomenal young musician, and he is going to be one of the great classical musicians of the future that, from my perspective, will be a household name.
At 36, Aaron Dworkin is helping thousands of students like Johnson. In essence, he's breaking the sound barrier with his orchestra of color. The opportunities for African American students to succeed in the medical field is growing, thanks to a nationwide program run by the National Institutes of Health. The program is called RCMI, the Research Centers in Minority Institutions. Dr. Jerry Guyden is the director of the program at the City College of New York in Harlem, where he teaches cell and molecular biology.
Individuals come into these environments and they feel like they can be whoever they want to be. So what the RCMI program has done is allowed people who look like me, who look like the students, to participate in science.
The goal of the program is to increase the presence of minorities in biomedical research. Students ranging from undergraduate through doctorate levels participate in the program.
I think the biggest challenge is teaching confidence in a foreign area. When you come into science, all they've heard about is that minorities don't do well in science.
Dr. Guyden is attributed with helping more than 60 students successfully complete the program. He reflects on one of his many successful students.
Stephanie is a student from Nigeria, and she came from one of the worst high schools in New York City. I used to give a talk up there. Stephanie was so shy and so unable to believe that she was in a position to achieve success that she would put her head down when I came into the lab. Stephanie's in her second year in medical school now. Whew. That's what we do.
Many of the students go on to become physicians or clinical researchers, studying diseases affecting their communities. Dr. Vincent Reed currently specializes in surgical oncology and head and neck surgery in New York. He attributes his success to Dr. Guyden and the RCMI program.
I became a part of Jerry's family. He took me home. I lived in his house. So I had multiple benefits, not just a benefit of working in the lab and you know, him mentoring me as a student in the lab, but I got that personal benefit of him being a father figure.
Dr. Michael Sams also excelled in the program under the guidance of Dr. Guyden and now helps manage the lab as a senior postdoctoral fellow.
I think Dr. Guyden, what he has done, probably without knowing it consciously, is that he has established a model of excellence.
The RCMI program is offered at several other notable colleges and universities, including Morehouse, Howard, and Jackson State University. For more information on the RCMI programs and the National Center for Research Resources, visit www.ncrr.nih.gov.